What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing my official 2023 NBA mock draft for the lottery. Again, we've done it again. We've gone from old picks 1 through 14. We did this previously, but that was of course before we knew the official lottery results and before we knew the Detroit Pistons got stuffed over to an absolute new beyond. Again, shout out Pistons fans, you guys have been absolutely through it. Keep battling, but hey, hopefully for the Pistons and other teams, I have found you guys the perfect player who's going to elevate your team from potentially being where they are to the next maybe championship. Who knows how, of course, this is all going to go and how some of these players are going to pan out, but hopefully I've made the right picks. Maybe I haven't made the right picks for all 14 of them, but in my eyes, hopefully some of you guys, I might have. So I guess without further ado, let's just get straight into it. But in today's draft, we now have the first overall pick, which will be going to the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't think there's going to be any way the Spurs even look to trade away this pick. I think it's pretty obvious, and I think they already know who they're, of course, going to be selecting with this pick. And I think I agree with the Spurs. And with the first overall pick, I will have San Antonio selecting Victor Wembanyama with the first overall pick. Again, this guy is one of the biggest freaks we have ever seen going into a draft. You know, of course, some names that we have seen that are just absolutely like God-gifted natural talents like LeBron James, Zion Williamson, of course, in his draft year, and now Victor Wembanyama is definitely on that list. A guy who I'm very glad is going to San Antonio, because if anyone is going to be able to develop him, it is 100% them. Victor Wembanyama, of course, is a 7'3", 7'4", depending what website you look at, power forward / center. Like, the fact that I can say this dude can play power forward is almost like one of the most outrageous things, especially considering he's like 7'4". It's just insane that he can literally switch onto the power forward and do his thing there. He is an absolute beast offensively, even having a jump shot that some people are literally comparing to Steph Curry, which might sound crazy to think, but then when you watch this guy play, he's got probably the smoothest jump shot I've ever seen for a dude above the height of 7 foot, and he just makes a lot of threes, especially for a guy that high. It's like something just extraordinary and something that you kind of never really have seen before. The only guy I think I can really fully name off the top of my head who's above like 7'1" that can hit threes decently well is, of course, like Kristaps Porzingis on an extremely consistent basis, who's done it, you know, almost every year of his career. And you look at Kristaps Porzingis and comparing to Victor, and Victor Wembanyama can just do that on a much greater scale. He's got an insane mid-range, an insane touch above the ring. He's just insane offensively. There's really nothing he can't do. He can dribble the ball, play make, got a really good court vision. And then when we, of course, take in all that to account, you also look at his defensive play, and this guy's an absolute freak defensively as well. Again, he probably will need to put on a bit more weight, because he is going to get probably destroyed against a player like Joel Embiid in the NBA. But honestly, I think that is the least of your concerns right now, is his weight. The guy can just defend, really can even switch onto the three as well. I've seen him do it, and he doesn't exactly go that bad doing it. Can definitely play power forward. It's just him playing on centers, his shot blocking ability, the interior defense, and even going up to the perimeter is a really good part of his game as well. Just an insanely good player, and one of the best players I think we've ever seen going into this draft. He definitely has a lot of really good things, of course, going for him. Again, counting all that, you know, it's obviously really good. There's not exactly a flaw of his game. The only issue with Victor would maybe be his weight, as I said, but you can definitely look past that. And the other thing is injuries. We know this guy has had somewhat of an injury run, and can definitely struggle to stay on the court sometimes. But it's just like you just have to look past that because of how insanely God-gifted natural talent this guy has. And especially at 7'4", being able to play like a point guard is just outrageously good. Again, a lot to work on in terms of putting some muscle on and some weight, but yeah, he is going to be an absolute star, I believe, and putting him onto the San Antonio Spurs is a really, really awesome idea. And if there's any team who can develop him, I think it's, of course, going to be San Antonio. So I'm very happy with this selection. I think it makes a ton of sense. Now, with the second overall pick, we have the Charlotte Hornets, who could have definitely used Victor Wembanyama themselves, but when we look at it, the fact that they were able to get up to pick number 2 is a really, really good thing for them, just because now they can finally put a player alongside LaMelo Ball, where LaMelo doesn't have to consistently take out his do-it-yourself type of kit every single game. And of course, with this pick, I will have them taking Scoot Henderson. I know that Scoot Henderson is another point guard, and that is pretty much the position that LaMelo Ball plays, but you just can't look past this guy. If Victor Wembanyama was not in this draft, Scoot Henderson would be a consensus number 1 overall pick, I believe. Not just that, in previous drafts, this guy probably could have gone number 1 as well. He is an elite level point guard who has absolutely insane off the charts athleticism, being compared to a younger Derrick Rose. And I know this player is in a bit of all sorts of trouble with his NBA career at the moment, but he's also being compared to Ja Morant. A bit of a hybrid of Ja Morant and Derrick Rose, just consistently extremely athletic, can score at really any will. His playmaking looks really, really nice as well. And in his first season against professionals in the NBA G League, I believe he did actually average around 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, which is pretty decent stats, especially in a pro league. I always do like to see these players go into the pros and, again, try out their game before they do, of course, get drafted. We know LaMelo Ball did it with the Australian NBL team, the Illawarra Hawks, and seeing these two potentially partner together, I think will be a really, really awesome combo guard type of thing. Again, you're looking at a dude in LaMelo Ball who is about 6'7", can definitely slot over to potentially guarding that shooting guard position if you need. LaMelo, I think he can play off ball. He's not really ever done it so far in his career, but he has played with Terry Rozier, a really dominant ball scorer, so it's not like he wouldn't be used to doing something like that right now. Anyway, Scoot Henderson, of course, comes in. A really nice defender as well. I think that's what people don't see is, look, 15, 5, and 5 are pretty good stats. It's definitely a top 5 pick player type of stats in the NBA, but what makes him the number 2 overall is his defense is really, really underrated with his athletic frame, just being able to do all that type of stuff on the defensive end of the court. Again, with all that into account as well, you just see the ability for this guy to be able to score as an athletic beast. Very similar stats, I believe, to what Ja Morant and Derrick Rose produced in college as well. So I definitely would really like to see this, duo happen. And honestly, things could maybe be looking up for the Charlotte Hornets very soon. I'm not sure what's happening with Miles Bridges. I don't know if that's ever going to get settled, but I did hear a rumor that the Hornets are looking, very close at Miles Bridges. And once they trade away, I think, Terry Rozier, which will probably happen once they draft Scoot Henderson and whatnot, I could definitely see Miles Bridges coming back to this Hornets team. And what an off-season it would be to add a guy who probably should be an all-star in the NBA right now in Miles Bridges. And you're also adding another guy who I think could be a future all-star in Scoot Henderson. What an off-season be for the Charlotte Hornets. And I just think this makes a whole lot of sense to probably go in and look to do a move like this, I believe. So yeah, with the second overall pick, I think it's a pretty obvious decision by the Charlotte Hornets to take Scoot Henderson. Might not be the greatest fit with LaMelo Ball, but I definitely still think there is a huge possibility that these two are going to be absolutely fantastic together. And yeah, just those two at your guards is one of the best combo guards probably going to be in the NBA. So I could definitely see this, of course, succeeding. And oh my god, if you get Miles Bridges to the team, imagine how entertaining that big three would be. LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and Scoot Henderson. Like, wow. I think people forget that when Miles Bridges was on the team, this Charlotte Hornets team wasn't even that bad. Like, they were, I believe, a 10th or 9th seed at one stage. You bring Miles Bridges back, you probably add some more pieces in free agency, bring in Scoot Henderson. Whew, you're looking at a really, really solid outfit on the Charlotte Hornets next year. And hopefully for them, a healthy LaMelo Ball and potentially, hopefully, a healthy Gordon Hayward too, especially if he will most likely be on the roster again next season. So again, with the second overall pick, I do have the Charlotte Hornets, of course, selecting Scoot Henderson. Now, with the third overall pick, we do have the Portland Trailblazers, and I am so happy that Portland got this pick. I'll talk more about that in a second, but with the third overall pick, I do have the Trailblazers, of course, selecting Brandon Miller to this team. He will be absolutely perfect. I have heard rumors that the Trailblazers are going to trade this pick, which I'll get to in a second. I'm not really liking those rumors at all, but Brandon Miller, my god, does he really add to this team and what they are trying to do. And I think he is an extremely underrated player in this draft. Probably, I want to say, almost one of my favorite players going into this draft. I am one of those guys who believes that when it's all said and done, Brandon Miller could almost go as being nearly the best player in this draft. Again, with Victor Wembanyama, we have no idea how he's going to go in the NBA, especially with the injury pass. Again, touch wood. I hope he succeeds. I think he'll be awesome, and I think he's by far the best player in the NBA. It's why I had him going in at 1. Scoot Henderson at 2, I think, will be awesome as well. But there's something about Brandon Miller that's just telling me that this guy is going to be a very rock-solid dude. Being compared to Paul George as well because of his two-way ability, this guy can just score at will. He's got a good mid-range, a good 3-ball. He's got an extremely just good offensive part of his game. And I think what really comes into it as well is his defense. This dude is a rock-solid defender coming into this NBA draft. Again, I look at him and I'm just thinking, look, you're looking at a guy who's 6'9". Not only is he compared to Paul George, but he's actually taller than Paul George. And I've even heard some people say he might be more athletic. But just his ability to switch from 1 through 4, very similar to what Paul George has done for the predominant part of his career, is just an absolutely insane, natural God-gifted talent. And I think he on the Portland Trailblazers is exactly what they need. They desperately need a small forward, I believe. They desperately need some defense to come into this team as well. And I think with a couple of things they can do to retool in free agency, this team could very well be back in the playoffs, I think, next year. And that's not even a big, really call to make. I think, look, I was never big on the Yusuf Nurkic signing. Back when they did it, I thought they needed a different type of center, and I think if they were to bring in an interior defender who can help out with the pick and roll, whether it's a backup or whatnot, could still be a really awesome decision. But yeah, Brandon Miller, he just adds so much to this, I think, Portland Trailblazers team that they don't necessarily have. Again, you've got your scorers in Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons. Jeremy Grant just wasn't the scorer that they need him to be, and I think moving forward, I do expect Grant to re-sign. I mean, if Grant leaves in free agency, that is a bit of a disaster, in my opinion. You definitely don't want to see that, but Jeremy Grant was supposed to come in and help Damian Lillard. He even said that he thought himself as to be a number 1, number 2 scorer on a good team. Again, that's what he wanted to do on Detroit, and why he he actually almost wanted to stay there, to be honest, just so he can try and be that number 1, number 2 guy. But he was given the opportunity to be the number 2 guy at Portland and didn't really live up to it. He just kind of, didn't really do that. And then Josh Hart at small forward was pretty good, but again, I just felt like when Simons would go cold and Grant wasn't stepping up as a scorer, they needed another guy to come in and help out. And you're looking at Brandon Miller here. can definitely do that. Not just that, the perimeter defense on their forwards now is going to be absolutely insane. Like seeing Jeremy Grant and Brandon Miller switch as your small forward and power forward, and both players having the ability to pretty much guard 1 through 4 is going to be a really awesome thing. And I think if Brandon Miller keeps developing that 3-point jump shot and gets it up to the ability of what like a Keegan Murray was in the draft before him, or even Paul George in the NBA would be a really awesome ability if he can get to even shooting as good as threes as PG. You're looking at Damian Lillard playmaking to 2 really, really good 3-point shooting forwards who can both defend the perimeter as well. Again, if Simons takes another step, which I believe he hopefully will next season, that Portland team will look really, really awesome on paper. Again, they've got to figure out what they want to do with their center position. It's not working. Nurkic I just don't know how great he is for this team. He's on too much money as well. It's not that great. I think you would rather a different player. But hey, if you can't get rid of him, I still think you need to go for a really good backup center in this draft anyway. But yeah, the fact that Portland want to trade this pick is so beyond weird to me. The only reason I think Portland should trade this pick is if they can go out and get like a pick, 6 and 11 in return from like an Orlando Magic, who I believe have like somewhat those exact picks nearly. Something like that would be a really good idea. Again, then you can draft the Jarace Walker to go play power forward on this team, move Grant to the small forward, and then maybe bring in another really solid young player. But that just doesn't help Damian Lillard as much as what it would be to go out and draft Brandon Miller. So, it would be a silly idea, in my opinion, to trade this. Look, they could trade for a star with it, but yeah, I just think it's a risky and a bit of a weird decision. I would take Brandon Miller with the 3rd overall pick. I think there just so happens to be a guy who fits your team at this pick. And look, if the Charlotte Hornets for some reason decide to take Brandon Miller instead of Scoot Henderson, which I don't expect them to do, but if they do, then yeah, maybe you hit the panic button a little bit, because Scoot Henderson, not a good fit for this team at all. But Brandon Miller, my God, yeah, he would be a really, really good player to see on this Portland Trailblazers team, in my opinion. Now with pick 4, the Houston Rockets did get this pick. Again, they fell somewhat in this draft, but I definitely don't think this is a bad decision or a bad luck really for this Raptors team. I really do think that for this Rockets team, I don't think that they really got exactly too stuffed over by this, but that's why in my opinion, I do think they should be taking Amen Thompson with this 4th overall pick. I know some Rockets fans are, very not excited that they couldn't get Scoot Henderson, but I think Amen Thompson honestly fits this team as good as what Scoot Henderson was going to be. He is a guy who is 6'7", who can play point guard, can play shooting guard, and even switch onto the 3. A guy who is absolutely insane defensively and, kind of insanely athletic as well. He really does fit this team, I think, quite a bit. And you can honestly now move on from Kevin Porter Jr., which I expect the Rockets to maybe, of course, try and do. KPJ and Jalen Green, they don't work well together. You got 2 guards who just shoot the ball as soon as they get it. There's not really any playmaking between them at all. They're both very similar. It's just that Jalen Green does it at so much of a better level, and Kevin Porter Jr. is an extremely turnover the ball type of prone player who you just don't want to see be your starting point guard. And it's, I think, one of the reasons the Rockets have definitely I think failed almost because of this, and suffered is probably the better word. They've suffered by having those 2 players at their guards. And look, you can bring Kevin Porter Jr. off the bench. That's not a bad idea. You don't have to trade him necessarily, but bringing him off the bench, yeah, it's much better idea than potentially starting him. I genuinely believe, though, that Amen Thompson fits this team really, really perfectly, because he's honestly just a much calmer, collected guard than what Kevin Porter Jr. is. Again, his playmaking is not necessarily, A1 just yet, but to be honest, he's going to come into this team and his playmaking will probably almost already be better than what Kevin Porter Jr. already is in his first season. He's definitely not going to turn over the ball as much as what KPJ will. At least that's what I genuinely believe. And of course, I think he will be just much more calmer. And I think the offense will be much more steady than what it is right now. Because right now, it's just all over the place. And it's definitely not great. So I believe as well, at the time of making this video, Amen Thompson is of course averaging around 4 or so assists per game, which again, he can definitely improve on in the NBA. But if we're going to see how he goes on this Rockets team, he definitely does bring in a lot of things that they of course need. And one of those big things is defense. This Houston Rockets team is, I'm pretty sure, by far and wide the worst defensive team like in the NBA. It is absolutely shocking. And switching Kevin Porter Jr. to be your backup point guard or trading him away and replacing him with Amen Thompson automatically doubles the defense that was being put out on the floor. He's an extremely good perimeter guy who can really switch from 1 through 3 as well. Can almost do it all. Again, his offense is also really good. 3-point percentage, I think, could definitely use some work going into the NBA, but when we're looking at it right now, I think what makes him such a really good player is, yes, he's got decent scoring, but when I look at this guy, I'm like, this is one of the best defenders in this draft. He and his brother are exceptionally elite defenders going into this draft. They're extremely athletic, already have a ton of highly great athletic plays and dunk packages that is automatically going to translate to the NBA. Not just that, he looks calm and collected when possessing the ball, and look, his playmaking will definitely need some work, but there are players like Darius Garland who I believe average 4 or less assists per game before they got drafted, and we know DG is one of the best playmakers in the NBA right now, having 2 seasons averaging around 8 assists per game. So there's no reason Amen Thompson couldn't come in and do this for this Houston Rockets team. Not just that, he brings in the much needed defense that this team doesn't have, and plus, he and Jalen Green are both 6'5" or taller as your guard, so it's going to be a pretty interesting dynamic, also extremely athletic. And if Amen Thompson's scoring converts to the NBA, which it might not straight away, but eventually will hopefully do, yeah, this guy's going to be a really, really good player, and I think this is an extremely good pick for the Houston Rockets. And I almost think I'm not saying he's better than Scoot Henderson, but I think he kind of brings in more than what the Houston Rockets need than what Scoot Henderson does. Again, I think that the Rockets are in so desperate need for this defense that Amen Thompson kind of does exactly that. So I'm really excited for the Houston Rockets, and I hope they do select his play, and I think it could be a really awesome fit for this team. Now, moving on to the 5th overall pick, we got the Detroit Pistons, who unfortunately for them, yeah, they fell, alright. They really badly fell. It sucks for them how they went from projected 1 to number 5. Yeah, it's not great, but luckily for them, there is a player available who I think can definitely help out their team quite a bit. A player who I think could legitimately be one of the best players going into this draft and most nearly NBA ready is Jarace Walker. And that's why I've got the Pistons selecting him at 5. I think he's a really awesome player, and if you'd like to know more about Jarace Walker, essentially he's a 6'7" power forward type of guy, really, really big frame, who is extremely good athletically. Honestly, if you watch this guy dunk, you're just like, holy crap, this dude is just absolutely insane. And I think there are a couple players you can, of course, compare him to in the NBA over time. Again, I originally thought he was 6'7", but some websites even have him at 6'8" now. So I wonder if he got, I think, if he even grew, or what that situation is. You're looking at a 6'7", 6'8" type of guy who is a power forward who can definitely switch to small forward, who's actually been compared to a more versatile John Collins and Paul Millsap, and those are two really awesome comparisons. I know John Collins has definitely fallen in the NBA right now, which is really sad to see. I think he just needs a different scenario. But people forget that Collins was a 20-point per game type of guy on I think conference finals team at one stage, is how good the Hawks ended up getting. And then you look at Paul Millsap, he's a former All-Star. So, again, Jarace Walker is an extremely big, strong dude who is athletic, who's a really good rim protector, naturally pretty decent on the defense. It's being said that he has a nice compact jump shot, which also shows a lot of promise. But again, his strength right now isn't exactly the 3-point line. He definitely needs to develop that, and he will. But his mid-range game is definitely really, really good. And you're looking at a really big dude who can almost muscle anyone in that painted area. An extremely good defender who also has a really good mid-range shot. And I just love this for the Detroit Pistons, because Detroit have been known for so long to be an extremely good defensive franchise who are really tough as nails and kind of have that grit and grind type of play about them. And that's why I loved when they selected Jaden Ivey, because I was looking at Cade Cunningham and Ivey and I was thinking, if these dudes can stay healthy together, you're looking at Cade Cunningham, who's like 6'8", Jaden Ivey's like 6'4", both extremely good defenders. Two are probably the best perimeter defensive guards in the league, kind of going at it together. Again, you look at those two and I'm just thinking, wow, they're already insane defensively. You keep building these defensive pieces and we could be almost saying that Detroit Pistons team of old. And I think, look, you bring in Jarace Walker to this team, it doesn't help their 3-point percentage, which is one of the worst in the NBA, but you're looking at a guy who fits into the defensive game style that the Pistons have been known to be playing for quite a while. And yeah, I think it's a really awesome idea. Plus, Jalen Duren, he's only going to get better. I see a lot of promise for this guy in the league, especially as a defender. I think he could be one of the NBA's best one day. And there was a reason Jalen Duren was compared to Dwight Howard at one stage. Again, his first season, he averaged 9 and 9 on 25 minutes. I don't know if James Wiseman's that guy. I've never been that big of a fan of him. But I think if the Pistons want, I think they will. I think they'll play Duren a lot more next season. That starting 5 actually looks a lot better. You're looking at, hopefully Cade's healthy. Cade at the 1, Ivey at the 2, Bojan Bogdanovic at the 3, Jarace Walker at the 4, and Duren at the 5. That team might not win a lot of games just yet, because it will still need to develop quite heavily. But wow, will that be a strong defensive team who are going to be tough as nails every single night. And yeah, it'd be awesome. Again, they're still going to need to keep developing most likely, but I think they might keep Bojan Bogdanovic around, especially if they take Jarace Walker, because God, does that starting 5 just need the slither of 3-point percentage, because yeah, not many people in that starting 5 can really shoot. So I'm not exactly too sure what they're going to do. I do think Jarace Walker is the way to go, and I think he would be a really awesome fit for this team. With the 6th overall pick, we actually have the Orlando Magic, and Orlando, again, seem like they just are continuing to hit the draft, and so far they've done a really, really good job with a bunch of their players that they've selected. Of course, taking the gamble and taking Paolo Banchero at 1 when a lot of people said they should take Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith. At pick 1, they really stuck to their guns, trusted their workouts, trusted their intel, and went with Banchero. And look how much it's rewarding them. And of course, Franz Wagner with a high pick, I think it was pick 8 or so the year before. Really good pick again. Suggs hasn't exactly panned out what they wanted him to be, but again, there's still a lot of time for him to, I still think, develop into being a really solid player in the NBA. And I think with the 6th overall pick, they have another chance to really add to this exceptional young core that they have. And with the 6th overall pick, I've actually got them selecting Ausar Thompson, who I think just absolutely fits this team and continues to make this team one of the most exciting squads, I think, in the NBA. When we look at Ausar Thompson, he's actually a lot, I think, more different to his twin that a lot of people think, you know, and actually know about. Again, with Ausar, he's actually a little bit different in the points where he's not really a point guard slash guard like his brother is. He can definitely play the small forward quite well and even switch, I believe, from 1 through 3 and even potentially the 4 as well. An exceptionally good defender at 6'7", just has the ability to read the passing lanes really well. He's got really good weak side help on the defense. He's just an exceptional defender coming into this draft. Not just that, he is an extremely athletic guy as well, who I think is just so underrated when it comes to that. This dude's got crazy hops, and the potential with his athleticism also ties in the potential with his defense, I think, in the NBA, where it's just going to go coincide of just being a really, really good player. Now, I've seen some comparisons saying that he's actually, you know, got a couple of players here and there, like, of course, his brother. He's compared to his brother in terms of his athleticism and defense. But, of course, you know, as well as some other dudes here and there, like a Terrence Ross. And I think people forget when prime Terrence Ross was in the NBA, he was an exceptionally good scorer who had extremely good hops. And, of course, wasn't that bad on defense either. And I think when we look at Ausar Thompson, if you can get the scoring and athleticism out of, you know, what prime I think Terrence Ross showed in the NBA, plus an elite level defense, you're going to be seeing an absolutely exceptional player, I think, coming to the NBA. And if you put him on this Orlando Magic team, God, is this team probably the most athletic squad in the NBA almost. Again, I don't know if, of course, Ausar's not going to fix their shooting issues. That's one big thing, is I don't think Orlando have really the greatest shooters, but I definitely think they can fill that out maybe on the bench. And who knows who their starting point guard is going to be in the future. Again, a lot of people say Markelle Fultz, but I wonder if you drafted Ausar Thompson, do you look at maybe someone different at that point guard? If maybe Jalen Suggs gets the nod. And again, if you put Suggs in there as well, just defensively, this team from 1 through 4 is going to be stacked. Again, you might need to do some work on your center defensively, but honestly, just having Ausar Thompson, Franz Wagner, and Paolo Banchero all in the same lineup, I just think is one scary thing, not only athletically, but defensively on the court. I think Banchero has a really high ceiling defensively. I think Franz Wagner is an underrated defender and can definitely grow into being a really good defender in the NBA as well. You look at Ausar Thompson, one of the best defenders in this draft class. Some people have him as the best defender, which is not so far-fetched to think as well. And yeah, the scoring is going to be really good, and I just really love this young team that this Magic team would be building if they drafted Ausar. Again, some issues with Ausar Thompson is his outside shooting isn't very good. It's definitely a fault of his game style right now. He's also not a very good passer compared to his brother, or not as good as a passer, I should probably say. But look, if you bring in Ausar Thompson, and even though himself and Banchero aren't the greatest three-point shooters, I think eventually, as they develop on their career, they could definitely get there. Again, Franz Wagner is a really good, or can be a really good three-point shooter. I think at point guard and center, we're not exactly too sure who's going to be the future names there, but even if you put Markelle Fultz still in there and playing him with Ausar Thompson, that'd just be a really scary sight, and something I think that would be really, really awesome. And again, the Magic have the 11th pick in this draft, and I've actually got them taking a player who I think will help with their shooting. Again, a little bit of a spoiler, but a little bit of a hint to the next video. But yeah, I think who I have them taking a pick 11 should help out with their shooting anyway. So it's just a thing where you're not going to worry about that with Ausar Thompson. Look, his shooting's not going to be great, but he's going to make up for it in so many other different aspects, and he's just going to be another really awesome building piece for this already great young core that the Orlando Magic are rocking with. So again, as I said, with the 6th overall pick, I do have the Magic selecting Ausar Thompson. Now, with the 7th overall pick, we have the Indiana Pacers, and this is another team who has an exceptional young core, and I think they're almost filling out nearly every position with a really young player, and I think we're up to that small forward position now, and I've actually got them selecting one of the best small forwards in this draft class in Cameron Whitmore, who I think could be a really nice help and player to bring in to this Indiana Pacers team. It's being said that Cameron Whitmore has an extremely good mid-range, a very, very capable three-point shooter, a pretty good defender as well that can switch from 1 through 3. A really underrated scorer as well. When I've talked about Cameron Whitmore in the past, I've talked about him being a really good shooter, whether it's a catch and shoot or from the mid-range, whatever it might be. But one thing I don't think touched on as much as I should have, how underrated of a scorer Cam Whitmore can be, and I think underrated defender at times as well. Again, might need to somewhat work on it if he wants it to translate to the NBA, but from what we've seen, this guy is a very, very capable defender. I've seen some people actually compare him to a bit of like a Justice Winslow, but with a jump shot. And you have to think about it, if Justice Winslow is one of those players that if he actually had a jump shot, he'd low-key be one of the best players in the NBA. Like, it's just the issue with Justice Winslow's game is he can do everything so good, like defend and play make, but he's just got no jump shot or scoring sensibility, and that's why he struggled so much in his career, is because he can do everything, but he's only going to put like 5 points, 6 points really per night out on that court. But you're looking at a Cam Whitmore dude here who's got the similar tools as what Justice Winslow does, but he's actually got an exceptionally good jump shot from the mid-range and three-point range, and also shown he can be a scorer as well. So you kind of combine Justice Winslow's defense and I think just ability to guard 1 through 3, and then you guard it with a scorer in the NBA, and you're looking at a really nice player. Now, the only thing that he probably doesn't have from Justice Winslow, though, is it's being said that he has not great playmaking skills. He's pretty weak when it does come to passing and ball movement, which is something he'll definitely need to, I think, figure out. But when if you get drafted in the Indiana Pacers and you've got Tyrese Halliburton on your team, geez, you don't really need to have much playmaking there, and that is an absolute fact, because you've already got that guy there who's going to be running this entire offense. And the way I see it is you're going to have Tyrese Halliburton having Benedict Mathurin as his shooting guard and Cam Whitmore as his small forward. Like, that trio right there, I don't believe there's anyone under 6'6". Like, I think Halliburton is 6'7", 6'6" maybe. I think Mathurin is like 6'7". You got Whitmore is 6'7" now as well. And they're all athletic guys who can all switch 1 through 3. So that's going to be an absolute big problem on the, I think, defensive end. It's going to really affect a lot of teams because they're just going to be a menace to society on the defensive end of the ball. So it's definitely going to be a really good thing. And I think, this is the move for the Indiana Pacers. Cam Whitmore just really, really adds to their team. As I said, he's a good defender, but it's also just being said that one of the reasons he's such a good defender is because he's consistently high energy all the time, and he even is really good at getting his own boards and just helping out on the rebounding end. And that's something you need on this Pacers team, because Miles Turner, about one of the only things he can't do is he's a very, very below average rebounder for a center. Like, he only averages, I think, 7 or 8 rebounds a night, which is not good really for a guy that averages 30 to 35 minutes. So, and how good he is, he does need help on the rebounding sometimes. So if you bring in a dude like Cam Whitmore who can do that and box out and has the ability to get boards over those taller opponents, then that's a really, really good match for this team. And I think, look, you need a power forward. Will they draft the power forward later on? Maybe, maybe not. You can go on a free agency and maybe bring in a power forward, but this team is really, really set, and the young core is just an absolutely awesome thing, and I'm really excited to see this team. And I think Whitmore just fits into what the Pacers are about, which is a high defensive team that likes to space the ball now. So, yeah, kind of a match made in heaven for the Indiana Pacers, and that's why I've got them taking Cam Whitmore with the 7th overall pick. Now, with the 8th overall pick, we have a team who yeah, has definitely missed on some drafts. A team who I always want to succeed, but just doesn't really, and it's really confusing, really annoying, and I think they really need to nail this pick, and this is the Washington Wizards, of course. They desperately need a point guard more than anything that they've really needed in the last 10 or so years. Like, it is such an issue where you've constantly got players like Kyle Kuzma and Bradley Beal trying to set up this offense because they've just got no point guard there to distribute the ball, and it has become an issue for so long. And look, there's not really an exceptional point guard on the board right now, but I think there is a guy who would be at this pick 8 range or so, who I think would be really, really awesome for this Washington Wizards team, and that actually just happens to be Anthony Black, who I think makes a lot of sense if you bring him in, as he's a dude that is around 6'7", listed as a bit of a point forward who is actually being compared to Josh Giddey, which is a really awesome comparison. We know Josh Giddey is one of the best playmakers in the game, does absolutely freakish stuff on the court, and I don't think that Anthony Black's playmaking is just quite at what Josh Giddey's was when Giddey was playing for the Adelaide 36ers in the NBL. But when I look at Anthony Black, he makes up for it in other things, as he's a really solid shooter who has a pretty awesome mid-range. Again, his three-point shot is not exactly there, but he's definitely developing on it. And what I really like about it is he's actually being said that he's a pass-first player who the Wizards desperately need. Like, they've got shot creators all around in Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, and I think Kristaps Porzingis. Wouldn't it be nice to have a dude like Anthony Black just come in and play make really, really well, be a pass-first guy, and also a dude who can eventually develop his three-point range? And when you've got Bradley Beal or Kyle Kuzma cooking it up, then you've got a dude like, I think, Anthony Black standing on that perimeter where he'll hopefully be able to hit. What's awesome about Anthony Black is he also, I think, will be able to help out with the rebounding that Kristaps Porzingis doesn't necessarily have sometimes. We know Kristaps is a guy that likes to venture out to the three-point line quite a bit, and when he shoots these threes, if they don't go in, there's never really anyone else there to get the boards, especially when Kristaps is playing that 5. You kind of rely on Kyle Kuzma to go do his thing, and Kyle Kuzma's not the greatest rebounder, if I'm going to be honest. I know his numbers do look good, but that's just because, again, Kristaps shoots so many threes, so they have to have a dude getting those rebounds. So I think you bring in a dude like Anthony Black, who's a taller point guard, who's going to be able to go in and help through that. Again, he's got a pretty good vision, though. Even though I said he's not as good as what Josh Giddey is, that's not necessarily saying he doesn't have a good vision. Again, as I said, he's a pass-first guy who's got a pretty good vision, pretty good around the rim as well, and has low-key sneaky quickness, it's being said. And again, he's got a beautiful jump shot. He hasn't been able to hit the 3-ball, but he's actually got a really, really nice and underrated mid-range as well. So I just wonder, look, he's not the most athletic guy out there, but he's kind of that Josh Giddey prototype now, that we're seeing that a lot of these players are really coming out of Australia. Like, you look at Dyson Daniels and Josh Giddey, both out of Australia, and even LaMelo Ball, who played in Australia. Anthony Black isn't from Australia, so I'm not sure if that's anything against him. Obviously, it's a joke, ladies and gentlemen. Don't attack me in the comments. I'm Australian myself. I just like to amp up the country. But you know what, Anthony Black, I like this move for the Wizards. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think he honestly fills in a lot of the things that they don't have, and they desperately need defense, rebounding, and playmaking, I think. And you're going to bring in the playmaking and the rebounding with Anthony Black. You're going to bring in a quick dude as well who's going to be a pass-first guy. Will he be there on the defensive end of the ball? Maybe. It's not, I think, officially going to be confirmed if he will be. I mean, when we look at that Josh Giddey comparison, Josh Giddey is either a really good defender or you look at him and you're like, yeah, he's pretty slow and unathletic. I think Anthony Black is definitely got that unathletic part of him, but he's definitely not slow. He's, I think, much quicker than Giddey. So on the defensive end of the ball, it's going to be an interesting thing, but I think he will help out in so many awesome and underrated ways with this Washington Wizards team. And he will definitely be a better pick, I believe, than a bunch of the players they've selected in previous years. And I think that's going to be a lot of comfort to know. And I think if you're Bradley Beal, you look at this and you go from having Delon Wright as your point guard, a guy who's like not a good passer at all, to a guy in Anthony Black who, look, he might not be the best passer in his first season. He might start off slow, but hey, maybe there's a chance if you tell him all you got to do is play make and get some boards. Maybe there's a chance he goes out and does exactly that. I doubt he's going to be trying to score over Beal, Porzingis, Kuzma, whoever it might be. He's just going to come in and I think play make, be the pass first point guard we know he can definitely be. And yeah, I think this is a really awesome and interesting prospect that I think Wizards fans are going to very, very like, especially if they decide to draft him here. Now with the 9th overall pick, we have the Utah Jazz, another team who I believe needs a point guard. And again, it so happens that there is a point guard around this kind of mark who I actually like quite a bit. Some people have him as a shooting guard, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure where his part of his career will be. I know he's definitely a guy who can just do a bit of both, and that's actually Nick Smith. He's being said that he's a combo guard mainly, and I kind of like him for this team because we know the Jazz desperately need to, I think, draft some guards in this draft. They've really got Colin Sexton there, and that's kind of about it. Colin Sexton's awesome, but I think we know with Sexton's future, he's probably going to be a three-point shooter, off the bench. His three-point shooting is low-key underrated, I think, but also just a really nice scorer off that bench. I wonder what they're going to do with Jordan Clarkson because I think Sexton would be a lot better of a player if Clarkson wasn't on this team. And Clarkson has a lot of trade value, so I'm not sure what's going to be going on there. But at the end of the day, both those players are pretty much bench players. Clarkson started, but I think his best spot in the NBA is off the bench. And if you bring in a dude like Nick Smith, that kind of allows that to actually happen, as he is a 6'4", again, point guard / shooting guard who has a 6'9" wingspan. And that's just super scary. Like, imagine putting this dude at point guard and him having a 6'9" wingspan. Like, he's going to be a really, really good defender. I've even seen some people actually compare him to a bit of a Jaden Ivey, where Jaden Ivey is a dude who's like 6'4", can guard the point guard, can guard the shooting guard. Pretty decent playmaker, but can just really be a very awesome defender. Extremely good wingspan. And that's kind of just what Nick Smith has. It's being said that Nick Smith, being a really, really good defender, does also have a really nice three-point jump shot and has an exceptionally good, deep bag in that could compare to the NBA very well, which is a really awesome thing, I think, for this Jazz team. It's being said that he has springy legs and really, really good bounce and can definitely play above the rim. And he's got a 6'9" wingspan, which helps him play above his size, where he can actually go ahead and potentially guard the small forward as well. It's being said that he's a really, really good defender and can be a very nice big-time talent in the future. Again, his playmaking, it might be a little bit of an unknown. It's going to be really interesting to see if this will translate, I think, to the NBA. But honestly, I think it'd be a good experiment to give it a go, especially considering this dude's going to be a 6'4" guy with a 6'9" wingspan. He's going to be an exceptionally good defender, which I think the Jazz lost a lot of at the trade deadline. They definitely lost a lot of their defense, and especially losing Mike Conley. Conley is an extremely underrated, I think, defender at that point guard position. So bringing in a dude like Nick Smith will definitely help bring that defense, I think, and restore that quite well. I do think the potential will be there on the playmaking end, and I hope that he can convert to being a good playmaker. And look, if it doesn't work out, there's no reason why the Utah Jazz couldn't say, look, he might not be the future starting point guard, but he might be the future starting shooting guard. Like, the fact that he's such an elite defender with a 6'9" wingspan, who's extremely athletic, is really awesome, because if the point guard situation doesn't work, well, you just play him at shooting guard. The dude's a combo guard. He can do both. And that's what's really awesome about this selection that I think will have Utah Jazz fans excited, especially if they do decide to select him. And look, in the first season, if you don't find your starting shooting guard or whatever, I still think Jordan Clarkson could start, and they'd be a really awesome duo. And who knows, maybe if they might even see that or disagree with me, that Colin Sexton is a future backup guard. Maybe they think Colin Sexton's a future starting guard, and this was just a year to get him back from injury. Maybe they have plans to rock him at the 1, and maybe have a dude like Nick Smith Jr. go to the 2. He would make up for a lot of what Colin Sexton doesn't do, which is defense. So, yeah, I think it'd be a really awesome duo, and why not? You could definitely see how that goes, and I think Nick Smith Jr. is a really solid player to have at this 9th overall pick, because his playmaking, we don't know yet if it will be what we think it could be and translate to the NBA. But at the end of the day, you're looking at a really good athletic defender who could quite potentially be a nice scorer as well in the NBA, who can guard 1 through 3. Like, this is a 6'4" dude with a 6'9" wingspan. Like, I've heard Jaden Ivey comparisons, but what about Bruce Brown? Bruce Brown's a dude who is also, I believe, 6'4" with like a 6'9" wingspan. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA, playing on a team who is in the finals now. Like, that's just crazy, and is going to be getting, I think, some pretty big offers in the free agency, especially from a team potentially like the Cleveland Cavaliers and the team he plays for now in the Denver Nuggets. So, a lot of really awesome things going on there, and I think Nick Smith Jr. could maybe be a similar type of guy. And look, Bruce Brown's even played backup point guard this year. So yeah, maybe that's the real comparison over Jaden Ivey. So again, I think this is a really good pick, and I think it makes a lot of sense that the Utah Jazz should, of course, be selecting Nick Smith Jr. with the 9th overall pick. Now, moving on to the Dallas Mavericks with the 10th overall pick. I think Dallas are in a situation where they don't necessarily need to be going out and obviously trying to draft that next star. They definitely don't need to do that, especially if they can retain Kyrie Irving, which I'm not sure if they're going to. What that's going to be like, we don't know, but you've got Luka Doncic at that 1. You should have cap space anyway, especially if you trade some of those bad contracts and whatnot, to go out and maybe even try and sign another star, even if Kyrie doesn't come back. And I think you've got some exceptional role players there in like Josh Green, but I don't think they necessarily have their future starting power forward. I think Maxi Kleber's cool there. Christian Wood plays some minutes there, not a whole lot. And I've heard rumors he might not be back in free agency. But if I'm looking at this Dallas Mavericks team, I'm just wondering, look, can you go out and draft a power forward here who's going to help out the team quite a bit? And so happens that the best player I think available right now is a power forward in Taylor Hendricks, who I think really fits this team. You're looking at a 6'9" guy who has really good size, really good length. He is a really nice jumper and a very, very good 3-ball as well. He's got that 6'9" strong frame where he's really, really good athletically. He's got a strong bounce and really scores effortlessly above the rim. It's being said that he's a great dunker and is always a threat to get a really nice offensive board, which it doesn't seem like the Mavericks have had in a minute. And it's also being said that he's really good defensively and can guard the 3 to the 5. A comparison that I love that this guy's being compared to, and I think this makes a lot of sense, is actually Jeremy Grant. And I think, yeah, you're looking at a younger Jeremy Grant, a dude who can be a really nice 3-point shooter that can definitely help out on the rebounding, but most importantly, be a really good defender, which I think this Dallas Mavericks team needs. I think they're one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA, and I think that's obviously a fact. And then you look at it like that. If you're going to have Luka being the ball distributor and even Kyrie, right, you're going to need some shooters around these guys. And they've already got Josh Green, who's low-key a really underrated 3-point shooter and underrated role player, who I think will obviously be their future starting small forward. He's an absolute gun, Josh Green is. So I think he'd be really awesome to have. He complements Kyrie and Luka so greatly because he doesn't need the ball to score. Can be a really nice off-ball guy. And I think if you bring in Taylor Hendricks, I'm looking at a very similar thing to Josh Green, just much better defensively. Again, you're looking at a guy who doesn't need the ball to score. You've got an exceptionally good 3-point shooter who I think, you know, can, of course, defend to an extremely high level. And I think if Dallas play their cards right, they can improve their defense so much since last season. Again, they were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. If you consistently start Josh Green, he builds up that confidence. He's going to be a star role player in this league where I think, again, week by week, he's going to keep improving that defense. Taylor Hendricks, look, he might not start straight away, but I see this dude playing 20 to 30 minutes per game, whether that's starting or off the bench. Switching from 3 to 5. He can play the 3, he can play the 4, he can play the 5. I think he's going to be very, very useful for this Dallas Mavericks team. And if they want to go small ball, which they've always liked to do, having him at center would be crazy. A 6'9" dude who can get an offensive rebound and just a board in general that has the ability to shoot threes. Yeah, crazy stuff right there. Again, I think in free agency with a couple of moves here and there, they might need to find their center and whatever, which could, of course, happen. I think there'll be a lot of things that go into that. I'm not too sure who their future guy will be. I don't think it's Christian Wood. I think they're probably just going to let him walk. He didn't do what I think they wanted him to, and I think they're going to be looking for a center who's going to be good defensively and can get a board here and there as well that can complement Luka on the pick and roll. You know, a guy like Clint Capella could be a somewhat of a cheap get, whether that's through free agency or trade. I think he's actually contracted, so maybe trade. But yeah, he would be a really awesome dude to maybe bring up on this team. There's a lot of things this Dallas Mavericks squad can do that I'm going to be really, really interested to see if they will, of course, do so. With the 11th overall pick, we have the Orlando Magic, who now have their second lottery pick. Of course, they do at the time of making this video have pick number 6, sorry. And again, I've taken, of course, Ausar Thompson with that pick, who I think will help out quite a bit. But with taking Ausar Thompson, you definitely don't really, I think, fix a lot of the shooting issues that the Orlando Magic do have. And that's why with this 11th overall pick, I figured it's time to bring in a good shooter, and I think Gradey Dick kind of actually fulfills all that. It's really interesting looking at Gradey Dick because there's a lot going on with him other than his extremely awesome last name. But of course, we're looking at a 6'6" small forward from Kansas who we know has been compared to Reggie Miller before. Yes, NBA legend Reggie Miller. And it's just like insane how good this guy is at shooting. It's being said that Grady's a versatile wing who is an extremely high level shooter and secondary scorer with intriguing upside. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in college ball and also has elite NBA skill that comes with that. He's a fluid athlete who really knows how to move without the ball and find room for his shot. Again, when I look at Gradey Dick, I do like to also compare him to, you know, a couple of guys who are already in the NBA. One kind of with his shooting ability and body type being like Corey Kispert on the Washington Wizards. And you might be thinking, look, Kispert's a good player, but he hasn't really panned out to be exactly maybe a pick 11 type of player, which you're going to get out of Gradey Dick. But the difference is between the two is Gradey Dick is, I think, a 20 times better scorer than what Corey Kispert is. I think when we look at Kispert, he was always just an elite shooter that might have had potential on the scoring end. But we know with Gradey Dick, this dude can turn into a scorer and could potentially be a nice shot creator, I think, in the NBA as well. So, look, his first couple of seasons, he might definitely be a really nice 3-point shooter for this Orlando Magic team. But I think the potential will definitely be to see this guy, of course, I think, go into being potentially a shot creator as well. And I think that's what you're really hoping, you know, to be. Again, defense is going to be an interesting one. He's not exactly extremely long for his height. We're looking at a 6'8" wingspan, which is only just bigger to his height overall. Again, his defense, I think, has been pretty decent, but again, converting to that NBA level is going to be, I think, a bit of a question mark. But when we look at this Orlando Magic, who seems like they're already building a really good defense, especially if they take Ausar Thompson with their 6th pick. Again, Bankura, I think, will develop into being a really good defender. I think Franz Wagner will as well. And then you got, of course, Jalen Suggs at that point guard, who is already showing he can be a really good defender in the NBA as well. You're looking at something really good. And I think one of the only things missing from this young team is just they've got really no outside shooting. Like, we know Banchero wasn't a good three-point shooter in his opening season. Suggs isn't really that guy from, shooting threes. Markelle Fultz hasn't been that guy either. If they draft Ausar, he's not known for being able to be a really good three-point shooter. Franz Wagner can be a really good three-point shooter, and I think will be for quite a bit. He's probably their best three-point shooter. But I think you definitely need to add a dude like Gradey Dick who would help out quite a bit, especially off that bench, to maybe come in and have 20 to 25 minutes per night as that shooting guard, as a small forward, maybe even a bit of a small ball at that power forward as well. But just overall being a really nice three-point shooter, and I think spacing the floor out for this Magic team, I think it gives people like Banchero, and if they draft Ausar Thompson, to really be able to use the paint area and I think actually have space to work with, because right now the Magic last season looked a bit clustered. We know Markelle Fultz and others just aren't that good at three-point shooters, but I don't think Carter was as good as he has previously been. Again, he had a really good opening season with the Orlando Magic team from three-point range, and look, it's going to be interesting to see how this, of course, does expand. He was still about a 35% three-point shooter, which is definitely all right. But yeah, it's just, there's only a couple dudes there that can really shoot. Adding a guy like, I think, Gradey Dick really spaces out the floor. And look, even a guy like, if they keep Markelle Fultz, if they roll with Suggs, whoever it may be out of those two, gives them more room to work with as well. And I think helps these guys out when it comes to playmaking, because they finally have a shooter to maybe actually kick it out to. Of course, I still think in free agency, you will have to sign a lot. I think a couple more shooters, because yeah, they are one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league, I believe. I think yeah, you bring in Gradey Dick, he helps out a lot with that, but maybe bringing in some 3-and-D dudes as well in free agency for hopefully a cheaper price. But yeah, again, Gradey Dick at pick 11 makes sense, because yes, he's going to be a good three-point shooter. He's going to elevate the team there, but also you're looking at a guy who could maybe be a shot creator one day, and especially if they have an injury or two, which touch wood that doesn't happen, but if they do, you're looking at a guy who could maybe, we'll have to see how he goes first, but maybe turn into somewhat of a shot creator in the NBA. But for now, I think he would be a really, really good three-point shooter who would space out the floor for this Orlando Magic team, and I'd very much like to see he and Ausar Thompson partner up on the Orlando Magic. Now, moving on to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have the 12th overall pick, and there's a couple of options that they could have taken at this pick, but in my opinion, I'm going to go with a dude who I think works for them, and a guy that they've drafted similar type of players of before, and that's actually Jett Howard, who is a really, really nice 6'8", I believe, 6'8", in fact, guy who can guard point guard, shooting guard, and small forward. Pretty nice on the defensive end. Some websites have him at 6'7". It's going to be interesting to see where he matches in the NBA, but from what I've heard, you're looking at a 6'8" dude who's a natural small forward who can kind of guard, I believe, the three positions in the NBA. Kind of similar to what they've got right now with SGA and Josh Giddey, who are really, really good at, moving from 1 through 3. And I'm looking at that team and I'm thinking, wow, if you have all those three maybe in a starting lineup at one stage, or just even on the floor together, from point guard to small forward, there's like no one under 6'7". Like that's pretty scary. And I'm looking at Jett Howard here, and it's saying that he's a really nice shot creator on the perimeter, a pretty nice overall scorer who can space the ball. It's being said that a couple of things on his downside are he's not exactly that great around the rim, and he isn't really a freakish athlete. But with OKC, they've got Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey's not really a freakish athlete. I mean, he is to the average person, but in the NBA, Josh Giddey doesn't necessarily stand out exceptionally great. But the thing is, he's got one of the highest basketball IQs out there. And I feel like Jett Howard might be a similar dude, but in terms of not necessarily playmaking, but being a decent shot creator who can who can shoot the ball. Be looking for another shot creator. I think in their starting 5, Giddy could be, but I think they want Giddy to be a massive facilitator in the NBA, who's going to be good on defense, and just being another option when they need him. I have a feeling Giddy's like that type of guy to maybe one season average like 10 points per game, but average like 8 rebounds and like 13 assists. Like, that's just the type of guy this dude is, and his basketball IQ is so insane. I think one day he could definitely be one of the best, if not the best playmakers in the NBA. Like, this dude's averaging like 7 assists a game with like not much to work with, and they've really made it work at OKC. They even nearly made the playoffs, which was kind of insane to think. And I think they'll be looking for another shot creator in this draft. I think they'll be going for that. They'll, of course, bring in a couple dudes in free agency and whatnot. They'll still have Chet Holmgren coming back, and I think it'll be really, really interesting. I'm not sure if Jett Howard will start. I think they might go for Lou Dort to start off with, but Jett Howard, to me, could be a guy that gets a lot of shot creating opportunities off that bench. He also looks like a type of guy who might be inserted into the rotation a fair bit when maybe they're lacking on shooting, or what it might necessarily be is just, another. He could even play that small ball power forward, I think, for Oklahoma as well. They've been known to try that out, and I just think it makes a lot of sense. He also helps out with the rebounding. I think it's been known that he's a pretty good offensive and defensive rebounder. And when you've got Chet Holmgren there at your starting center, who weighs about as much as a paper plane. Okay, that might have been a bit disrespectful, but you guys know what I mean. He doesn't weigh that much, and I'm not sure how good he's going to be at rebounding in the NBA. He's going to need help, is what I'm trying to say here. And he's already got Giddy and SGA, who are tall dudes who can help out with that rebounding. But I'm looking at a guy like Jett Howard, who's been pretty good at that as well. So I think Jett Howard fills in a lot of what this Oklahoma City Thunder team need. They, of course, I think, need another shot creator, and they might need some rebounding, right? You bring in that, he's not only just good at shot creating and rebounding, but you're looking at a dude that can shoot as well, space the 3-point line, and just a guy who I think should be able to work pretty well with Josh Giddey and SGA. The only issue about this pick really is, because I don't think the athleticism or anything is going to be a question mark, especially for Oklahoma, because they just don't really care about that. It just shows. The only thing this might be a little bit suspicious to me is I'm not sure if Jett Howard will fall to this pick. Again, there is a chance. He has been, I've been hearing he's been pretty good in these pre-workouts and stuff. He's been training in the off-season, all this stuff, and just working out. And I've been hearing some good things and that he might jump up in the draft. So it could be an interesting one. You're looking at some mock drafts having this dude at 17, some having him at like 8. I'm going to meet in the middle ground, and I think he's kind of perfect for OKC with this 12th overall pick. And I hope they do capitalize on him. I just think he kind of fits in what they are trying to do in the NBA. And yeah, I just feel like that's a scary proposition. If you're looking at a team that's got like 6'8" Josh Giddey at point guard, 6'7" SGA at shooting guard, and 6'8" Jett Howard at small forward. Wow. if you got a dude a power forward who's like 6'9", and we know Chet at 7 foot, then you've got no one in the starting lineup who's under 6'7". That's a scary team that could flourish on defense, and I think maybe cut some teams up in the future. And I think overall this would be a good pick by Oklahoma, and that's why I've got them selecting Jett Howard with a 12th overall pick. Now moving on to the Toronto Raptors, one of the more interesting teams going into this draft. A team we really don't know what they're going to be doing in free agency and how they're going to be going about this. I've been hearing rumors that Gary Trent Jr. might be getting signed and traded soon. Rumors that OG Anunoby could be getting traded again this season. We've heard the rumors last time. Fred VanVleet, I don't even know if he's going to get signed and traded. I've just been hearing rumors that guy just might flat out just walk. A lot of really interesting stuff going on with Toronto. But at the end of the day, it's unclear about what their future, I think, is going to be like. especially if they're going to roll a dude like Scotty Barnes at point forward, which I still think they might be looking to do. But in saying all that, if you're going to roll Scotty Barnes at point forward, I still think it'd be interesting to give him another guard. And there's one guy out there who I feel like fits that Toronto Raptors system and how they've previously gone about it. So with the 13th overall pick, I will have the Toronto Raptors selecting Cason Wallace, who I just think makes so much sense for this Toronto team. A 6'3" point guard who I believe has played a bit of shooting guard as well. Seems like a guy who was an absolute elite defender, being compared to Jrue Holiday as well. It's being said that Wallace is a 6'3" guard with the ability to go pretty high in this draft. He's an elite defender who is being considered to be the best perimeter defender in the game. He's a menace on the ball and racks up steals at an outstanding rate. He's also been said to be a productive scorer, and he's become an incredibly consistent three-point shooter. And that's what I like about partnering him with Scotty Barnes. If he wasn't a guy who could maybe shoot these threes, I'd maybe say, look, I'm not sure how this duo would go together. But Toronto Raptors, before they had Fred VanVleet at their, I think, point guard, have always been a really, really nice defensive team in the NBA, especially with like Kyle Lowry as their point guard for so long. I just think it'd be awesome if they go back to that role. I think it's what they're kind of setting out to do, especially with firing Nick Nurse, who I think turned into quite a bit of an offensive coach in his career, and I think they want to go down more of a defensive type of style, I would assume. And I think Cason Wallace fits into that. If you're adding a guy who's being compared to Jrue Holiday to your team, you're already winning. Jrue Holiday is a guy who I believe in the first 4 weeks of this NBA season, most recent season, was like 4th in MVP, especially when the Bucks couldn't lose at one stage. We're looking at Giannis being 1st in MVP and Jrue Holiday being like 4th in MVP at one stage. Then we know Holiday ended up making the All-Star game and was just an elite player, I think, throughout most of the season until he cooled down, I think, towards the end of it. But I'm pretty sure at the start of the season, that dude was averaging like 20 points per game on 8 or 9 assists as like the best defender in the NBA nearly. So if you get a dude like that in Cason Wallace, you're just already winning. And I feel like he's a dude who would be able to go to Toronto with no problems, would be able to fit in. And if they hire a defensive coach, then I mean, you're looking at Scotty Barnes and Cason Wallace as your two main ball distributors and facilitators. I'm looking at those two guys and I'm thinking, yeah, incredibly good defensively. And Pascal Siakam kind of went from a bit of a bad defender in that 2021 to 2022 season and turned into a really good defender in the 2022 to 2023 season. I'm not sure how he just flipped that switch like that, but we know Pascal Siakam has become a really, really solid defender, I believe, as well. So if they continue to build this team, Cason Wallace at the 1, I think maybe Barnes will float from the 2 to the 3. Not sure which one he'll be at, probably the 3. Siakam at the 4 and Pirtle at the 5. That team defensively is an absolute rock, and I would be kind of scared to play that if I was an opposing team. So Cason Wallace, look, his defense is awesome, but I feel like I haven't even gotten into the part where this dude could be a shot creator in the NBA, especially if he could become as good as a shot creator as what I think Fred VanVleet had been before this season. Again, he became kind of a shot chucker this season, but before this season, he was a pretty good shot creator. I think that's going to be a really, really awesome thing, and just being a really good three-point shooter. Now, I'm not exactly too sure how Wallace is going to be with the playmaking. I've heard some say that he still needs to have some work on it, but has the Jrue Holiday flashes. Jrue Holiday, you know, had years where he was a really good playmaker, had some years where he was, just seemed like more of that shooting guard type of player. But Cason Wallace, even if he's not a good playmaker, to start off with, I'm still looking at, I think, Scotty Barnes being able to take that load as a good playmaker. And I think being able to help out Cason Wallace in that area quite a bit. So I think this, on all accounts, just makes sense for the Toronto Raptors, and I think it's a good pick. So again, with the 13th overall pick, I have the Toronto Raptors selecting Cason Wallace. Now, with the 14th overall pick, we have the New Orleans Pelicans, and this is, again, another one of those teams that I think was a little bit hard to pick from. I think a lot of people have the Pelicans picking a lot of different players. They didn't do what they should have this season, but to be fair to them, their best player was out. But there was one thing that I think, oddly enough, stood out from this Pelicans team that they just didn't have towards the end of the season. And other than maybe their center issues that they kind of had a lot, with Valanciunas just not really being that guy this year, and Hayes just, again, not that guy. The other thing I think they kind of missed out on was kind of a shot creator. They had Brandon Ingram, and when he was playing, the shot creation was awesome, but again, when he was on the bench or just injured or whatever, the shot creating kind of was as non-existent as my father. It just wasn't there. CJ McCollum tried his hardest, but I believe also battled with some injuries throughout the season. I think there was a lot to work on with this New Orleans Pelicans team, especially when it comes to shot creating. Again, if you had Zion, then it's pretty good, but they just didn't exactly have him. And even if they have Zion and CJ and Ingram all playing together, off that bench, there's just really no shot creation. So with the 14th overall pick, I do have the New Orleans Pelicans selecting Jordan Hawkins, who I believe could be a really nice shot creator in the league, especially off that bench. I'm not exactly too sure if he'll be a starter. Look, he could pull a Devin Booker or Zach LaVine, who I believe both played quite a bit of college ball off the bench and then kind of exploded to the scene as a starting scorer in the NBA. But Jordan Hawkins has kind of been compared to a bit of like an Anthony Simons type of player, a really nice shot creator who has really good ball movement and is a really nice three-point shooter. He's also an extremely good free throw shooter, being about 90% from the line. It's also said that he's a really nice defender that can do that quite well. The only thing that's being said is he's not exactly great with his size. Sometimes plays, a bit smaller, but also sometimes plays a bit taller and just hasn't really found his, I think, middle range, which we know some players just never really do. And of course, it's being said that he might struggle, especially if teams put him at that small forward position. He's only been able to really guard, I believe, guards around his height, not necessarily those 6'7" shooting guards that play small forward as well. So look, that's an issue, but when it comes to his height, he's a pretty good defender there. That can, again, just be a good two-way player coming in with that scoring too. I think when I'm looking at Jordan Hawkins, if he can come into this team and just be another really nice, consistent three-point shooter to have alongside Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ, then that's a plus. They've been really trying to do that recently with drafting players like Trey Murphy and whatnot. I just wonder what they're going to do at their center position. With that, it's going to be really interesting to see, because Valanciunas just hasn't been the greatest three-point shooter. Jonas Valanciunas only, I think, hit 30 threes this season, which is definitely quite a bit of a drop-off, I believe, of some previous seasons where he shot around 160 to 200 threes or so. Again, he only shot about 100 threes this season, making around 30 to 40 of them. So it's definitely a bit of a worry. I just wonder with this center on the Pelicans, especially if Zion's playing, if they just need a center that can be a consistent, really good shooter like a Karl Anthony Towns, like imagine Cat on this team, or if they're just going to roll Zion at that center. I just can't imagine Zion at center just being so dominant and having Brandon Ingram, Trey Murphy, and like a Jordan Hawkins around him, all as his three-point shooters. That'd be low-key really scary, and that's what Jordan Hawkins, I think, also adds to this team. You're looking at a guy who's not only going to be, I think, a really nice shot creator, especially off that bench, and of course he's got the potential to do it, but a guy who I think is going to be a really, really good shooter. You're not really looking at any bad things here. You're not looking at his defense on taller guys here, because you're looking at a dude who, when Zion is off the court or when BI is injured, whatever it might be, you're looking at a guy who could maybe step into being a really nice shot creator. But when those players are healthy, you're looking at a guy who won't be affected by that and will consistently be a good three-point shooter around him. There's not a whole lot of flaws with this pick other than he might struggle with his ball handling and his defense, you know, on taller guys. But if you're playing him on dudes his height at his position of shooting guard, then that's fine. I think it makes sense for this Pelicans team to go for a pick like this, and I honestly really, really like it. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys agree with my picks, or do you guys not? Of course, I would really like to know. Don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channel, my IRL/long chat, and my podcast. All of them will be getting linked in the description down below if you haven't already. But yeah, of course, most importantly, I'd like to hear what you guys think about these picks. Let me know down below. And yeah, leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.